Before Captain James T. Kirk, we had Captain Christopher Pike. While the character's history is explored in detail in Strange New Worlds, what happened to the man behind the original captain of the Enterprise? Before there was William Shatner, there was Jeffrey Hunter. The actor may not be a household name today, but when Star Trek was in its infancy, he was a rising star in Hollywood and an undeniable heartthrob. Hunter famously played the Enterprise's original captain, Christopher Pike, in Gene Roddenberry's first Star Trek pilot, but he didn't return when the show was given a second chance. For the show's second impression, Roddenberry came up with Captain James T. Kirk's character instead. The reason for Hunter's exit depends on who you ask. The Star Trek franchise launched nearly 60 years ago at this point, so it's no surprise that some of the details of its creation have been muddled over the years. While there's no shortage of information about Hunter's involvement with the show, accounts of his exit differ wildly. We know that when Star Trek mastermind Roddenberry started working on a second series pilot, Hunter didn't come back to portray Captain Pike. Instead of recasting the character, Roddenberry conceived of an entirely new captain and crew, with only Leonard Nimoy's modified Spock coming back for the second version of the show.
Originally, the design of the character was that he would be red and that he would be from Mars and he would ingest energy through a plate in his stomach.
Eventually, audiences would see chunks of the initial pilot episode, initially titled The Cage, in the Season 1 two-parter The Menagerie. According to some, Hunter left the show due to an issue involving his then-wife, Joan Bartlett. In Leonard Nimoy's 1995 memoir, I Am Spock, the actor notes that he was the only character to return after the initial pilot, because Jeff Hunter was let go when his wife began to represent him and made what Gene considered excessive demands.
We've lost the captain.
Shatner also touched on this story in his own book, 1993's Star Trek Memories. In that account, he notes that the official story at the time was that Hunter wasn't available for the series by the time the pilot was being reshot, but that wasn't the case. As Shatner wrote, in truth, Hunter wasn't so much unable to commit to the series as he was fired. Apparently, there were problems with Jeffrey. Not while he was shooting or on the set or anything like that, but afterward. Shatner said that when the second pilot was in development, Hunter's wife started coming to production meetings. His account continues, saying, evidently, she hated the first pilot, and as a result, she began to frequently storm into Gene's office, loudly making demands like, from now on, my Jeff must only be shot from certain angles. Shatner also claimed that Roddenberry once confided in him that Hunter and his wife were tough to deal with, and he decided they should part ways. There were so many tantrums, restrictions, and ultimatums being laid out on the table. But this sensational take on the situation doesn't fully match up with other sources. The Star Trek Encyclopedia simply notes that Hunter was unavailable for the new Trek timeline, a typical problem actors face when one pilot episode eventually turns into a years-long commitment. Another source, Brian J. Robb's A Brief Guide to Star Trek, states that NBC didn't like Hunter's casting, and that, coupled with the actor's hesitance at committing to a full series, meant that he ended up dropped for the second pilot. Other first-hand accounts shed even more light on the story told by Shatner and Nimoy. The Trek blog Fact Trek obtained audio of an interview featuring Oscar Katz, who was executive vice president for Trek company Desilu at the time of the second pilot. At an early fan convention, Katz told attendees that Hunter hadn't actually seen his Star Trek pilot by the time the show was set to make a second one. Still, the studio was desperate to keep him on board after spending over $500,000 on the footage that featured him previously. Katz explained, before he resigned, he wanted to take a look at it. A screening was set up where Gene and I think Desilu executive Herb Solo was there, in a very large screening room at Desilu, invited Hunter in to see the Menagerie. Katz said that Hunter and his wife screened the episode, and he could tell from the whispering between them that one of them didn't like what they were seeing. Katz later got word that Hunter didn't want to do the show anymore, but thought that this was a negotiation strategy. Katz told the business affairs department to try to keep working with Hunter's agent. Katz recalled, weeks went on. Our business affairs department and his agent were miles apart, and finally we were running out of time, and worse than that, our tempers were getting short. One day I said, well, forget it, we'll sign another lead. Forget the $645,000 worth of film. Yet another account from Herb Solo told E! that Jeffrey Hunter didn't show up at all.
And in walked Jeffrey Hunter's wife, without Jeffrey Hunter. Is Jeffrey coming? No, Jeffrey isn't coming. I'm seeing it for him.
Solo, in producer Robert H. Justman's book Inside Star Trek: The Real Story, also repeats that Hunter didn't show up for the screening, but his wife did. As the end credits rolled and the lights came up, Jeff Hunter's wife gave us our answer. This is not the kind of show Jeff wants to do, and besides, it wouldn't be good for his career. Jeff Hunter is a movie star. At least one detail of this account is incorrect, as the book called Bartlett Sandy when her nickname was actually Dusty. But there does seem to be one primary source proving that this screening happened, with or without Hunter. Fact Trek found an invitation from Roddenberry to Hunter, in which the Trek creator wrote that the network was interested in the show, but were, quote, a little afraid to do something this unusual. Roddenberry seemed to be trying to convince Hunter to give the show a chance in the letter, as he continued. In any case, I think it is important that you see the film. You and I may have to sit down someday soon, and it would be impossible for us to talk objectively unless you had viewed it and had time to digest it. A later letter from Roddenberry to Hunter, featured in Star Trek Creator, the authorized biography of Gene Roddenberry, shows that Roddenberry got the news that Hunter passed on the project secondhand. In the letter he wrote, I am told you have decided not to go ahead with Star Trek. This has to be your decision, of course, and I must respect it. The TV creator added that he harbored no ill feelings and continued, I hold no grudge or ill feelings and expect to continue to reflect publicly and privately the high regard I learned for you during the production of our pilot. It sounds like in the end there were no hard feelings between the men, at least not on the record. As for why exactly Hunter, or Bartlett, decided they were no longer into the strange experiment that was Star Trek, well, one additional source ventured a guess. In his Roddenberry biography, The Man Who Created Star Trek, author James Van Hise said that ultimately, Hunter's wife convinced the actor that science fiction was beneath him. Unfortunately, this may have been a miscalculation. Hunter's biggest roles in films like The Searchers and King of Kings turned out to be behind him by the time he was given the chance to play Captain Pike full-time. He divorced Dusty Bartlett and passed away just 4 years later in 1969 at the age of 42.